Oklahoma Gardening is a production of the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the land grant mission of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University, dedicated to improving the quality of life of the citizens of Oklahoma through research-based information. Underwriting assistance for our program is provided by the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing. Today we've got another great episode of Oklahoma Gardening. We're going to start by taking a look at how to refresh our houseplants by adding a little style. As we know, the weather can change quickly in Oklahoma, and Becky Carroll is back to show us how to make the terrain of the landscape work in our favor. I'll show you a great way to get into gardening with cool season crops. Finally, Steve Upson will share another raised bed construction design that provides easy access. Houseplants have become quite popular lately, and whether you already have houseplants or are just getting into the trend and have recently purchased one, I want to show you a way to add a little more personality to your houseplants this winter. Now, houseplants are becoming more popular for a good reason. They often improve the air quality that's around us, and often they soften the harsh landscape that's surrounding us in our home. A lot of times we're surrounded by artificial stuff, so we just want to bring a little nature into our environment, and houseplants are a good way to do that. Now, we've got a couple of examples here of some traditional houseplants, and usually when you purchase them, they might come in a nice decorative container. And a lot of times they don't have anything around the top of them. So today we're going to talk about soil toppers. Now this is something that we really call it just for houseplants. Outdoors, a lot of times we mention the benefits of having mulch on our landscape. And there's several different reasons why we put mulch in our outdoor landscapes. One of those reasons is to reduce the amount of evaporation. Now, houseplants being inside don't have the direct sunlight to them, so we don't really have that much of a concern of the evaporation out of our houseplants. So that's not why we're adding soil toppers. What we are looking to do, though, is to prevent splashing. A lot of times when you water outside, you're watering and the water will splash up, often causing that soil to splash up on the plant as well. So when you water your houseplants, you have that same concern. You'll often use a stream of water and it can erode that soil around your roots, which will then dry out those roots faster. Or if there is that splashing, a lot of times that is a way to introduce pathogens onto those leaves of your plants. So keeping a cleaner look by adding a soil topper, that will help reduce that splashing. Another benefit for adding mulch outdoors is to improve the soil over time as that mulch breaks down. So typically when we're talking about landscape mulch, we use something like shredded hardwood mulch or pine bark or even cottonseed hulls, something that will eventually degrade and break down. Now, you can use these to add around your houseplants if you want. You might have leftovers, and so that'll work just fine to keep that splashing down. The big difference, though, is you're not necessarily trying to improve the soil in your houseplants. Houseplants are planted in an artificial environment with potting soil, which isn't even true topsoil. So you're not necessarily looking to improve that soil. After all, once this plant does outgrow this container, you'll repot it in new potting soil. And also, again, if you deplete the nutrients in here, you can easily add fertilizer. That's often not the same maintenance that you would do in outdoor landscapes. So again, you can use the same mulch if you have it left over and you want that look, but sometimes you want a little bit more of a polished look indoors. And so for that, because we're not trying to improve the soil, that opens a whole nother range of things that you can use as soil toppers around your houseplants, such as glass beads. beads come in an array of colors, so you can really play up the theme that might be in your office or in your home. If you have a teenage girl, you could get pink beads to help decorate her room. Now, I know a lot of times people use rock in the landscape, but like I said, I'm not really a fan of using rock because that doesn't break down and improve your soil. But since we're talking about a house plant, you could use something like some aquarium rock that often is colored as well. So you could get like a neon green or pink if you wanted something really kind of festive. Now for a more organic look, if you wanted to, you can also use Spanish moss and apply that around the base of that plant. So again, it's just going to kind of give it that nice sort of neat, clean look. It will help reduce the splashing of the water and again, help a little bit with some of that evaporation. You always want to make sure that you kind of lift that away so that you can tell if your plant does need water though. Another option, if you want to add a little more theme to it versus just the color, is something like seashells. You can get some seashells. You can either buy these at a hobby store or perhaps you've collected some. This often will really look nice in a bathroom especially. And again, depending on what the theme of your pot is, you might get colored seashells to kind of play up that theme as well. These are, of course, smaller houseplants, but it might be that you have some larger houseplants. And a lot of times those houseplants can get top heavy because they like to be in a small, tight root base. So if you have a plant that is taller and maybe a little bit top heavier, that's an opportunity for you to also display some of your rock collection. So if you have some large chunks of glass or some other special rocks that you've collected on your vacations, that's a good opportunity to put those in those houseplants to give them a special location. Now, the other thing that we often talk about in the wintertime with houseplants is we want to make sure that they're not put in a drafty location because they can dry out. So put them in an area where they're not exposed to drafts, either open doors or heat vents. However, we do know that a lot of times in the wintertime, our house air can get a little dry, which makes our skin itch. So if you're looking for a kind of a 2-for-1 solution, if you have house plants that we know when we water them, we want to make sure that they drain freely. Now this does come with a saucer that will catch that water, but a lot of times house plants have holes in them, so they're going to need to drain. So getting a tray like this will allow that water to drain out. If you were to just set these in here, you want to make sure that you empty this tray so that the plant is not setting in the water. However, another solution would be to fill it again with some decorative rock that perhaps maybe you've either harvested out of your garden path or you've purchased. Put some of that rock in that tray and then place your house plants on top of that. When you water these, the water will drain out, but it'll sit in that tray, allowing it to evaporate over the next few days, which will add humidity into your dry winter air. Often we think of the Oklahoma landscape as being flat, but actually there is some slight elevation that can play a critical role in your backyard fruit trees. Today joining us is Becky Carroll, the OSU Extension Specialist. Becky, let's talk a little bit about these frost pockets that we can find in our landscape.
Yeah, cold air is a lot like water. It's going to flow downhill and collect. So these low spots like right here, this is going to be maybe a couple of degrees colder than even up where we were starting. And so it really makes a big difference on the location that you plant your trees.
So why do you not want fruit trees in frost pockets? Obviously, because it can do some damage, but let's talk about the mechanics of it a little bit.
So, you know, most of our fruit trees are going to be blooming early spring. And with Oklahoma's weather, we never know when we're going to get that last spring freeze. And so if we can keep those trees a little bit warmer, we'll have a better chance to have a fruit crop. And so even a degree or two can make the difference between having fruit and not. And so we saw it last year, a lot of areas where those low spots, that late April freeze that we had last year, those low spots had trees with no fruit in the bottom part even. And so it can make a difference just in that tree space. So maybe the top part of your tree has fruit and the bottom doesn't. So it can make a big difference in just little things.
So we're out here at the Cimarron Research Station, and there is a bit of, it's flat, but there's a bit of elevation from the north side all the way down to the south with pecans behind us. Tell us a little bit about how y'all have laid out your planting to deal with that elevation.
So peaches are one of the earliest blooming. So they usually bloom the middle of March. You can just about put your clock on March 15th to the 20th in this middle part of the state. And so they're blooming before pecans and apples and pears usually. So we want them on the best location, the best site. And here on the station, that would be right up on top of this hill. And so it had the most elevation, really good soil. So when we get cold air, it settles down that hill, flows all the way down to the bottom. And last year we had some of those trees in the very bottom part of the pecan trees had some freeze damage, and the ones up a little bit higher didn't have any problems. And so it can be a big problem if you're in one of those low areas. And it doesn't have to be a big slope like this. It can just be a little bit of a dip in an area can cause a big issue as well.
All right, so talking about elevation, is there a particular side that we should be looking at too on the slope, or?
You probably, if you have a choice, an eastern facing slope is going to be better than north or south, just because it's going to warm up a little bit slower, and it's not going to be as cold if it's on the northern slope. The south facing slope is going to get more sun, more warmth, and so those buds may push and come out a little bit quicker. So eastern slope, a little bit better, but I would really look at elevation first.
All right, Becky, thanks again for giving us a new perspective on how to look at our landscape.
You're welcome.
This is the time of year that as a gardener, we all get a little antsy to get outside. And while the garden hasn't completely woken up yet, there are a few things that we can start to do, including planting some cool season crops. Now, cool season crops are different than warm season crops because they prefer growing at a temperature below 70 degrees. So they actually can really take advantage of some of these really warm winter days that we have as we head into spring. Now, if you're wondering what the difference is between a cool season crop and a warm season crop, well, a good rule of thumb to think about is what part of the plant are you trying to harvest? If it's the root, the stem, or the leaves, it's likely a cool season crop. Think about carrots, lettuce, celery, broccoli. Those sort of plants we're after the plant tissue. Whereas if you're after the fruit of a plant that comes from the actual flower, such as peppers, tomatoes, watermelon, then those are your warm season crops. And it actually kind of makes sense because when you start a plant, what's the first thing that grows on that plant? It's usually the roots and the stems and the leaves. And so therefore your harvest is a lot sooner on those plants. Now again, this is just a very general rule. It doesn't apply to all vegetables. It's not a hard and fast rule. One example that breaks this rule is sweet potatoes. So sweet potatoes is a root, but it is a warm season crop that we harvest later on in fall. So let's get to planting our cool season crops. We've got some lettuce here, some radishes, and some different greens like spinach and things like that. So we're gonna do something called succession planting. Now, when you get your seed packet, a lot of times it's tempting to go ahead and plant all of those seeds at one time. But with cool season crops, you don't necessarily have to do that because it might be that if you plant all of this lettuce, then that means harvest is going to come all at the same time, and you probably don't want to be eating that much lettuce at one time before it goes bad. So succession planting allows you to plant just a little bit and then plant a little bit more the next couple of weeks, and so on and so forth. So you've kind of intervaled your harvest time as well. Now we are planting today in a trough here, so I'm just going to plant about 1.5 feet of lettuce seeds. If you're starting from a previously planted container, you want to make sure that you've freshened up that soil or added new soil. Sometimes the soil level can shrink down a little bit, so we're going to go ahead and add some more potting soil to our bed here, just to raise up that level a little bit. Now, of course, a lot of times when it comes out fresh, you're going to get clods like this, so you want to make sure you break that up and then smooth out your planting area. You don't want to completely fill a container over the edge, because if you do that and when you water, then a lot of times that water will take your seeds away and wash them away. So make sure that you leave a little bit of a lip on your container. Now, the beauty of planting cool season crops is just having a nice fluffy surface area is really all you need. A lot of times the seeds are very small, so we don't really have to worry about planting space too much. You can see here with some lettuce seeds, what we're going to do, see how tiny they are? We're just going to kind of sprinkle those across our surface here. And you would do the same again with like radishes and carrots and stuff. We will probably come back and sort of thin those out just a little bit as they continue to grow, so that they don't compete for space. But we're going to just sprinkle these on here, and I'm going to do, like I said, about 1.5 feet, and that's about it. So we're going to kind of mark this area here. And I'm using my hand just to kind of cover this up a little bit, and then of course we'll need to water those in to really settle that potting soil around those seeds. So in a couple of weeks I'll come back and do another couple of feet, and so we'll have a later harvest, and we can continue to do this for a while as we go through our spring. And depending on when those warm summer temperatures finally arrive, then that's going to make our lettuce a little bitter. Now, if you're new to gardening, this is one of the easiest ways to get involved in gardening, is with cool season crops. Also, if you have any young kids, this is a really great way. Now, with carrots, you want to be mindful though that you're after the root, and so if you have any like heavy rocky clay soils, that oftentimes will cause those carrots to split and kind of give you some funny looking carrots. Now on this particular thing, you can see that this is more of a trug style planter, and so it slopes inward. So if we were to put carrots on the edge, then they're going to kind of hit that and then kind of divert and maybe not be the straightest of carrots. Another option to do if you're just getting into gardening is just simply get a clay pot or some sort of pot like this and fill it with some potting soil. So it can be that simple. But this is a great way to grow cool season crops. If you haven't invested in a garden bed or anything like that, or you don't want to invest in a large container, something as simple as this is a great way to get started into gardening, especially for young kids as well. Some of these cool season crops, when you plant them, they will be ready to harvest in as little as 30 days, providing you with some really instant gratification. So here we have some carrot seeds. Again, they're very tiny, so you can see how little those are. And we're just going to sprinkle those along the top here and then kind of tamp them into that soil profile to make sure there's good contact. And of course, we'll water those in. Remember to keep that lip there so that they don't wash away when you are watering them. Again, cool season crops is a great way to get introduced into gardening, whether you're young or finding it later on in life. We are here once again in our backyard concept with another raised bed design, and joining us again is Steve Upson with the Noble Research Institute. And Steve, thanks again for coming and sharing another idea with us.
You're welcome.
We know you're a fan of tires, But this is a different take on it. So tell us about the pros and cons of this particular design.
Okay, we refer to this as the easy access garden bed. Easy access because it is easy in terms of accessing. We're looking at waist high, so it's a raised bed, right?
Perfect, yeah. No bending.
That's the idea. This is the highest profile bed that we have. No bending, okay, for adults.
And it provides a lot of planting area, more so than some of the others.
Yeah, this has the largest surface area, planting area, and it's 40 inches wide, which is wider than most of the other beds. It also incorporates a little more soil depth, a little bit more opportunity to grow a myriad different crops, and instead of having a multiple of maybe say the modular type beds, sometimes this one bed will satisfy an entire family. It does take a little longer to construct.
Yeah, this isn't something that you would make and take and move it. You're going to build this in place, right?
Right, it'll be in place. It sets on the semi-tires, like you can see here. We have 6 tires. You can put other combinations together and make it as long as possible, but from a logistics standpoint and just making it feasible, we found that this arrangement, 3 stacks of 2, works really well for most backyards.
And the semi-tire just makes it larger. Could you still use the regular
You can.
vehicle tires?
It's a little bit less sturdy. These tires are extremely sturdy. They're built, of course, stronger for trucks. They're a little more difficult to work with, so you want to make sure that you have plenty of time and take your time to do it, because it does take a little bit more time to put together. But once it's together, it doesn't move. This is a very heavy bed.
So we've got our stacks of tires. Tell us a little bit about that interface of the soil and the tires.
Okay, so we have the liner here is just corrugated roofing tin. It actually bends up underneath and lays on top of the upper tire. The tires support the whole structure, obviously. And then we have a crack in between both sides.
Okay.
And that allows the roots to grow down through the actual container here into the soil that we use to fill the tires.
So there is soil in each of
There's
these
soil
tires. Okay.
in the tires. It's just regular garden soil. And what we prefer up top here is a more of a potting type of soil.
Okay.
But it is heavy enough that you could put a good sandy loam soil and then amend that with potting soil if you'd like, because it can withstand the weight.
So what about the ends? Because obviously the sheet metal doesn't curve up on the ends.
You could turn the sheet metal up on its end so it would conform to the shape of the bed, the tire. But in this case, to make it look more attractive, we've just lined it with treated 2x, and it makes it look, like I said, a little nicer. It solves the problem of trying to hook the metal, arrange it that way. You stain the wood, and then of course we try to treat this metal. We'll put some coating on the inside to keep it from rusting this quick.
Okay, and then we've got our wood stakes here simply to help provide more support for any accessories we do on top.
Right. It's all the wood is part of the frame, and then we've got these little pipe here to accept any bows or, like you said, any trellis type of arrangement, attachment, accessory you want to build on top of the bed.
All right, so we got again a nice low frame here for season extension, but as some of your other beds have shown, we can do trellises just simply by changing this out.
Right, yeah, and you can customize them any way you want to. You could put a little different size of pipe here if you wanted to go with a little smaller pipe for a trellis, like we have on some of the other beds, but this is the design we came up for this particular little mini micro tunnel or hoop house on top of this bed.
All right, well, it looks like a really nice addition, something that you could easily kind of incorporate to kind of be a fence, on a deck or something that you could harvest from as well. So
I think this is one of our more attractive beds. And another nice thing about it, Casey, is that because of the indention between the tires, you can actually put your foot up under the bed, and it takes some of the weight off of your back. So I guess if you say this is an ergonomically correct position to be working with, instead of bending your back,
right,
you put your leg here, and that way you don't have to bend over as much. So this is one, I think, my wife's favorite bed. I keep bringing her up in a lot of this because I bounce a lot of ideas off her. She tells me what's if I'm sane or not.
Well, that means it's tried and true. So thank you for sharing this idea with us, Steve.
You are very welcome. It's been fun.
There are a lot of great horticulture activities this time of year. Be sure and consider some of these events in the weeks ahead. For the next 3 weeks, OETA will be doing fundraising. However, you will be able to watch Best Of shows on the OETA World Channel. Then join us back here at our regular time when the 2022 Oklahoma gardening season resumes on March 19th. To find out more information about show topics as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure to visit our website at oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. And we always have great information, answers to questions, photos, and gardening discussion on your favorite social media as well. Join in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. Tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater gem. We would like to thank our generous underwriter, the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Additional support is also provided by Pond Pro Shops, Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, the Oklahoma Horticultural Society, and Tulsa Garden Club.